Alright, so to try and get a realistic diamond, what we'll do, start off by deleting everything. And there's this add-on to get stones and stuff, which is called Extra Objects. It's this right here. And it should already be in Blender and everything. You just have to check mark it. And then you'll have access to basic diamonds. You'll go down to Mesh, Diamonds, Brilliant Diamond. It automatically comes in with perfect proportions, and it's about a 1 carat, more or less, a little over 1 carat. So we're gonna lift this up, add in a ground plane, that way it has some kind of a background. Let's see. Oop. Ground plane, do like 100. And then before we do too much more, we need to make sure our units are correct, which they are not. Metric and millimeters. Then go back into N, and you're gonna look and make sure these are obviously way too big, so you're gonna scale this down until it's about 6.5 roughly, but you want to keep those same proportions, so just keep scaling it, and right about there is good. Then you will Alt G to get that back to center. Scale this back down. And select your stone, hit period, and that will zoom you into it. And then you can see this clipping that's happening, so you can't see what's happening. Go to view, and then this clip start, you're going to have to bring that down to 1, or as far down as you can, and that will let you get within 1 millimeter before it starts clipping. So we can make this a lot smaller. Then we are going to lift the stone up. The pavilion here, from Culet up, this angle is exactly 40.5 degrees. So we're going to turn it on the y-axis by 40.5, and that will make it sit exactly flat. Bring it down as exact as you can get it, because when we render it, it will be reflecting light off of it. So if it's clipping into the ground at all, or hovering over the ground, you'll notice it. So get it as close as you can. And then we need to add in a camera, and it starts off huge. So what we can do is, first you go over to view and then lock camera to view. So now why isn't it working? Make it a lot smaller. And then when you look through the camera, even when it's lined up, it will start clipping also. So you have to change the clipping on that also, and that is in focal length, clip start 100, bringing that also down to 1 millimeter. And then you can line it up. Okay. There we go. So once you do lock camera to view, you have to go back into your camera, and then it will lock to your view. So get that to an area where you like. Usually if you're rendering stones by themselves like this, which you won't usually, but you want to not just get the front of it, because that will look fake. You want to get a little bit of behind it and stuff. Maybe get down low on it. You can move your ground plane back. That way you have the background all the way. Right, and once you get it positioned, then turn that off. That way you can move freely. And if you want, you could scale this down. That way it's not in your way. That won't change anything. Okay, now for the materials of a diamond. We'll open this up and go to the shader editor. And in here, diamonds refract red, green, and blue light. So we're gonna add 3 glass shaders, and those will be each their respective colors. come here, go to RGB, and it doesn't have to be in this order, but it's easiest if you do red first, then green, then blue, and you can keep them in order better. Green, and then blue. Okay, and then IOR is the index of refraction, which is essentially what angle this certain stone or material refracts light at, and it will do each color differently. So red light, it does at have it on the other file, the finished file. That rate, 2.407. Put that in. This one is 2.417. And then the blue one, I don't remember what that was. Oops, wrong one. That's back here. Okay, so then you're going to get an add shader, get 2 of those. So the add shaders will not change these when they combine. It will simply make a channel for both to go through separately. So it's just combining them all into one, but not changing any of them. So if we just do this, what we'll get, if we go into rendered view, which I don't think we have a light, so we'll have to change that. So we probably won't be able to see anything. Yeah, won't be able to see anything. So we'll add in a light now. Here where it says object, you change that to world, and we're gonna put in an environment texture. So type in environment, and this is just an HDRI that you can get anywhere. Preferably one that's indoors like this, because it would look more like a jewelry store and it would look more realistic. And I brought mine down to 0.1, I believe. Now, if we go into rendered, you get this view, which is very dark, but you don't want it bright from every direction because you want to have ambient light and then direct light. So now we'll add in a area light, which will come in huge. Scale that down, bring it over here, and then this little yellow thing here will direct the light wherever you point it. So kind of give it a little bit of an angle. Okay, and then we'll adjust how strong it is, which is right in here. You want to change this to, let's see, I think it's 8 milliwatts. Really small. 5 milliwatts and 20 millimeters. 5 millimeters and 20, and this is milliwatts. There you go. Let me double check that the environment is supposed to be 0.1, not 0.2. Yeah, 0.1. So now you can see, let me change back to object. And I was wondering, it wasn't really like reflecting light. That's because we're in Eevee, which it will automatically put you in, and that just lets you look around and render it quickly because it doesn't render all of the light paths. So if we change this over to cycles, then we'll get a more realistic look. There we go. And if you have a GPU, change it over to GPU, you'll get a better and faster refresh rate. So you can see that you can see all these different colors that are refracted through it, but it's really dark. and it will slowly lighten up over time, but it just doesn't look sparkly like a real diamond. So the reason for that is this refractive rate, all of those numbers between this one and this one, and this one and this one, are black. There's nothing there. So it makes the whole stone have these really black artifacts through it. So if we can replace that with white, it will make it a lot sparklier. So take another glass shader, 2 of them, and the average between these is about 2.413, let's say. So 2.413, and then between these two is about 2.3 or 2.43. 2.43. And that way any light that is between these values will be completely white. So then we'll do another add shader up here. Okay. Add these in, and then we're going to add in what's called a light path. And what this does is, and a mix shader. So what this does is we're going to have all of these come in the bottom, this come in the top, and this is camera ray will essentially say that any light that isn't reflecting red, green, or blue from the stone will be white, and that will make the whole thing sparklier. So just like once it updates, eventually, oh, gotta connect it, that's why. There we go. See how much more sparklier that is? And now that light seems too bright now. So we might have to back up that light because it's making it glow. The other reason it looks so white is because it is reflecting a white background, this. So if we make that black, which is very common for showing diamonds, make it black, make it metallic so it reflects, mostly specular, and a little on the rough side. So essentially kind of like a leather texture. That looks good. And then we can actually add in a leather texture, which looks really good against it, as you saw in the finished product. Put that here. We can open it up, go to desktop. And you want as big of a picture as possible, like 4K, with as small of leather as possible, because it's got to fit over a pretty big area. So obviously these corners are not being used, so this leather has to look a lot bigger. So what we can do is optimize where it is. That way we can use as much as possible. So scale this down. Come on, let's do this, not in rendered view. There we go. And this is why you might want to angle your camera down a little bit, because the more you angle down, the less big of a plane you'll have to do, which means not as big of a texture. So I'm actually gonna make mine look down a little bit more like this, just to make it a little bit easier. And then rotate this to match it. Okay, now again, all of this is not being used, and usually you can't really do anything about that, but I found that if you match it to what the camera is going to see, you get a little bit more room for the texture, just to give it a little bit more. Makes it look a little more realistic. Oops, I didn't do that, only on the Z plane, or not on the Z plane. Okay, so now if we hit A, select everything, and then we're gonna unwrap it. We're gonna do the Smart UV project. and just hit OK with whatever settings it comes up with. And now if we come over here to the UV editor, you can see we get like this trapezoid shape, which is essentially what we've created. And when we add in that texture that's already there, this is as big as it can go. Otherwise, you start clipping and you see these weird artifacts on these sides. But if you turn it, you can get a little bit farther, it seemed like. Yeah. Okay. So then what we would do is add in a mapping node, which essentially tells the picture where to be, and the mapping is told where to go by the texture coordinates. And we're going to go off of UV. Go to vector, and then from vector to here. Then if we go into render view, we'll see that. And then that seems pretty shiny. So the other thing we can do is bring down specular a little bit. Bring up roughness. And then you could also add in a normal map based off of it, which I haven't tried yet. So let's try that. It might make it look a little bit better. So use the same mapping because you want it to overlap perfectly, but you're essentially going to use the black and white from it to make it look bumpy. So add in a normal map. And for normal maps, they have to be black and white. They're usually blue and red or whatever, but you just don't want other colors throwing into it, so just do it non-color. And then go to strength and put that into your normal map, which you can see it just adds in a little bit of shadows and such. And then you'll see that this one turned to non-color, so you have to hit this little icon and it makes it a separate instance, so that now when I change it back to like Filmic Log, it will be its own thing, and this one will stay non-color. Okay, so now let's turn this a little bit towards us. Good. Alright, still kind of shiny, so let's make it a little bit less. So we'll make it rougher. Yeah, that's better. A little too rough, but on the track. You don't want to make it look like it's a wet surface, but leather also is a little shiny, so it reflects, so you have to find a happy in-between. And for metallic, you can play with in-between values, but usually things are either all the way no or all the way yes. So keep that in mind. Let's see, that looks pretty good. Now the other thing we can do is add in a couple more just for kind of background noise and such. So put this back like here, maybe one over here, make this one be on its head, 180. Make sure it's on the that same ground plane. Okay. That might have changed where it went. Yep. Alright, and then just add in a couple of background ones back here. Okay. And the reason I'm doing this is, one, so that it's not just one stone all by itself, but also you can use what's called depth of field, That way here is in focus and everywhere else is slightly blurry. And it makes the center or the center of attention pop. And if you don't have anything else in your scene, you won't really get that same feeling. So move this one out a little bit, make it feel a little bit more random. Okay, so now for the depth of field, it is very heavy on your computer to do it in full rendered view, but you can't see it in solid view. So what you can do is go into Eevee. Why won't it let me select the camera? There we go. So go to camera, or go to Eevee first, sorry. Cycles, Eevee. And then when we go into render view, it's very simple, very easy to see. When we go to the camera, turn on depth of field, and you can see everything is crazy blurry. That is because focal distance right now is at 10,000 millimeters, and we're about 10 away. So we'll bring this down until stuff seems to be in focus. Oh, we got a glimpse there. So around 30. So let's try, and you can see this strip right here. That's what's in focus and everything else isn't. So that means it's a little farther away. So I believe it is. So that should be maybe like 33. Okay. And then this down here is how dramatic of a blur do you want? How quickly do you want it to get blurry? The higher the value, the more of an allowance you have. The lower the value, the more dramatic it is. So bring it up to probably more than you would expect, probably about 50. Okay. And then obviously the big one you would want to be the main focus. So let's try and play with this until it's about right. So that got real close. Let's bring it down a little farther to 29. Okay, more blurry. Let's try 31. Better. 32. Worse. And this just depends on your scene, so you have to play with it until your main focus is very sharp. The whole thing obviously won't, but that's why you want a very gradual blur. Otherwise, see, like here, the back of the stone is already blurry, and that just doesn't look realistic. So we'll bring this up to maybe 80. Ooh, maybe even 90. Let's try 90. And that way this is very in focus, some of the ground is in focus, but these stones back here that aren't important aren't, and it just gives a depth of field that way. So now let's try this in cycles and see what this looks like. So see how these, you can still see all the refraction and stuff, but it's just, it looks like someone actually taking a picture of it. And also you can see this leather, see how big and bulky it is. It doesn't look overly realistic, and that's because I couldn't find a picture big enough to fit here for such small stones. But one thing you can do is, because leather isn't that small, we can actually make it smaller in here. Make it bigger out here. That looks a little better. What were the settings I had over here? Because this one ended up pretty good. Oh, I think I did all of it in the UV editor. Yeah, I just did it in the UV editor. So let's try and let it just do it. Let it figure it out. Yeah, it's about as good as you'll probably get from that. So, and the reason for an HDRI in the background instead of just this light is because you get odds and ends. You get browns of chairs and tables and windows, natural light, and all these other weird variables that will come in that add these different small brown reflections. And to give you an idea is if we were to take this away and just have no background, obviously it's not bright enough, but if we take the picture away, you can see, although it's dark, you can see that there's no color in it. It's very white and looks very fake. And as soon as we plug this in, you can see natural browns and other things that are in the room that just makes it look and feel more real. Okay, so that should be good for the stones. We'll double check their material. Let's see. That's good. That's good. That's good. Yep, all of that should be good. And that looks pretty realistic. And then when you go to render, you'll come over here. Your camera's already in position and all. Come here and do the multiply sign and then 4. That will make it your picture like 8K or something, 4K. You just want as much as possible, that way you can get a real fine, crisp line on those diamonds. I usually do 16 because it gives you more colors, essentially, a bigger variety and depth of color. Bring this all the way up to 100. This is essentially how much it throws away, how much little material that it thinks it doesn't need throws away. For something this small and precise, I like to crank it all the way up. Then it goes over to this one. So then samples, keep it there, go to advanced, and then you'll go to, is it here? Oh, branch path tracing. This will give you this. So then go to transmission, type in 2. So this is a ratio. So 1 is 128. 2 would be 256. It doubles it, triples it, whatever. So the main ones that you want more of are transmission, subsurface, and then volume, which is, all of those are pretty much the light refracting inside, and that's what you want to prioritize. After that, that's pretty much it. Make sure it's GPU compute. The other thing is when you come up here and go into preferences, it is right in system. Make sure you're actually using your graphics card, because it's automatically on none. And make sure that's selected, and then save it and close that, and then you should be good. And then we will hit render, and we'll see the result.